Coming at you live, coming at you live. This is your boy Skillz, and this is Skillz On Sports. This is week 4 of our time together, and I'm hoping that it's week 4 of about 448 more weeks to go, at least. Because I'm having fun doing this, and I'm hoping you have fun listening to me as I ramble on and on and on about the world of sports. Baseball, football, basketball. Hockey is not a factor in this. I am not a hockey fan. I know nothing about hockey except they use wooden sticks. So, we'll start. We'll start like this. You guys remember that time that the Nuggets and Lakers played in the Western Conference Finals and the Nuggets swept the Lakers out of the Western Conference Finals? Specifically because I wanted them to. Specifically because the Lakers beat my Warriors. Well, I have a feeling that the Nuggets also wanted to sweep the Lakers, or at least wanted to beat the Lakers. I don't know if their goal was to sweep them out of the conference finals, but that's what happened. Big three of the Nuggets played like you would hope a big three would play if you're trying to win a championship. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter, on down the list. Even former Lakers like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope all contributed to this effort here. I'm going to have the numbers for you here shortly. Game 4 was really not in. It didn't appear that the Nuggets were going to wrap this one up in a sweep the way Game 4 was going in the first half. Lakers got off to a pretty good start. LeBron, who finished with 40 points, and the rest of the squads had it going on early on, but a pivotal third quarter where the Nuggets doubled up the Lakers. What was it? Let me have that in front of me. It was 36-16 scoring-wise, and honestly, watching it, it felt like more than that. They seemed to just do whatever they wanted to do in that quarter against the Lakers, and then the Nuggets came back and held on in the fourth, thanks in large part to Nikola Jokic sinking what has to be one of the most impossible threes that you're going to see. And I've seen some impossible threes in my day. I believe the one of the toughest ones. We'll go. I guess this was in 2015. I want to say 2015 or 16 when Steve Kerr was still new to the Warriors as coach, and Stephen Curry was still establishing himself as an NBA superstar, legend, shooter, and all that. You probably remember this play. I'm gonna have a hard time describing it because it was such a weird play. Steph had the ball near the top of the circle, dribbled in, lost control of it briefly, dribbled back out, and took probably the worst shot in terms of probability and in terms of, degree of difficulty that you're going to take on a possession like that, and he buried it. And you remember the shot of Steve Kerr, Coach Kerr in the background, with his hands on his head like, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? That is a shot that only Stephen Curry and maybe Damian Lillard now would be allowed to take in the NBA. And even back then, as crazy as things were starting to get back then, today you might see more of those shots. Back then, it was not a regular thing for a shot like that to be taken, where you're inside the 3-point arc, you lose the handle, the play's busted, and your next action is to run back outside the arc and bury a 3-pointer, and even shoot the 3-pointer, let alone bury it. The degree of difficulty was not an easy one. I know I probably would take 25 shots before I could make even one of them like that. Another really tough three that I remember was I didn't see this one live because this happened when I was not a basketball fan. Yeah, I think I should have looked this up. It was in the late '80s or early '90s. Jeff Malone I think he was with the Sixers at the time. I could be wrong, Sixers or Jazz. He's fading. He's got the ball and he's chasing it down in the corner, in the left corner. Corrals the ball, and as he's flying out of bounds, heaves it towards the hoop, and it goes in. Nothing but net. I believe it was Bill Simmons in his book of basketball who said that as far as degree of difficulty, the next toughest shot other than that a guy would have to make it with his thingy. Bill used a different word. I'm not going to use that word. So this 3-pointer that Jokic made was not quite at that level of Jeff Malone or even that level of Steph Curry, but it was a damn tough one. And if you saw, you know what I'm talking about. He's basically fading away. He's near the top of the circle, off to the left a little bit. He's fading away. He's off balance, and he buries it. And that put the Nuggets, I believe, the one that put the Nuggets up 6 with, I want to say, about a couple minutes to go. And then the Lakers just, I know if I was a Laker, I would have been deflated by that. I would not have had the energy, the motivation after that to even, because if those shots are falling, you've defended Jokic in every way possible. Jokic is not a classic shooter. I mean, he can hit the three, obviously, but he's not a guy who's going to beat you with the three on a regular basis. But right then and there, he basically put the Lakers to bed with that difficult fadeaway three-pointer off balance, and that was that for them. And then, of course, now we're not going to, at least I don't intend to, but we'll see which way the discussion goes. But in the wake of the Nuggets winning and clinching their first ever trip to the NBA Finals in about 50 years of existence, dating back to their days in the ABA. We're talking like guys like David Thompson and Dikembe Mutombo and Alex English and Carmelo Anthony. We got more on Carmelo Anthony down the road here too to discuss, and all those great Nuggets of the past who were unable to get them to the finals, and Jokic and company and Murray and Coach Michael Malone, sorry, I'm not supposed to call him Mike if you don't know him. They're going to go to the finals, and the Lakers are going home. In the immediate aftermath of, this was talked about all over Twitter, and I got some Twitter stuff for you too. In the immediate aftermath of the Nuggets clinching game 4 and celebrating, within seconds, maybe they got 3 or 4 seconds of camera time before the ESPN crew shifted over to the Lakers. Sullen, broken, heads down, obviously not happy about the result of that game, the game that they have full control of. And we know that the Lakers are the more celebrated franchise out of the two. We know the Lakers have been to the finals a million times. They've got a million championships. Can the Nuggets have their moment? Can the Nuggets be in the spotlight for once? It's their first trip to the finals. They're gonna be happy. Maybe they want to watch it later on TV later on. They want to watch themselves, see how happy their own faces are, how the joy, the raw joy. Maybe they want to enjoy this later, and they're going to turn on ESPN, and they're going to see all the ESPN cameras turn to LeBron. LeBron has enough airtime as it is. The sports media world wants to capture LeBron doing just about everything except taking a deuce, dropping a deuce. We see him everywhere, everything. We don't need to see. We know he's upset. We know Anthony Davis is upset. We know all the Lakers are upset with being swept, with blowing a game that they have full control of in the first half. We don't need to focus on them during the Nuggets moment. Who does that? Who does that? Would there have been anyone outside of Los Angeles who would have been watching television that night complaining about the Nuggets getting too much celebration time? While we want to see the Lakers, we want to see the Lakers pouting. I want to see Anthony Davis walk back to the locker room all sad. And I'm not saying you don't show it. You just don't show it that fast for that long. And I forget if I remember correctly, the Lakers were shown after the cameras switched over to the pouting of the losers. They were shown for a rather long time. I don't remember exactly how long, but it was longer than what the Nuggets got. That's for darn sure. So they're going to turn on their DVRs later. They're going to want to watch themselves celebrate. Hopefully there's some other, being in the NBA, they have access to some other film, some other camera where they can see themselves jump up and down. There's maybe some cell phone film, who knows. But that was, to me, ESPN and their love affair with LeBron. And I'm not saying LeBron ain't great. I'm not saying people don't want to see him. People do want to see him. But other people, they have to consider other people. This is the same thing that was going on in the 90s and into the O's. When the Red Sox, well, really not even the 90s, but the O's and the 10s, is what I'm trying to say, it was when the Red Sox and the Yankees were on all the ESPN, every sports center, every ESPN show, every ESPN everything. It was all about Boston and New York. Pedro Martinez and Alex Rodriguez and Derek Jeter and David Ortiz and blah, 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 blah. You just got sick of it. You got sick. Even to this day, it's hard for me, even though they've dialed it back a little bit, but even to this day, I have a hard time watching Red Sox Yankees on ESPN just because it brings back those horrible memories of wanting to connect ESPN with any other team. They had no interest in any other team, and they couldn't have hit it. They couldn't have made that any clearer than what they were making it. They only cared about the two teams, I guess they're geography-wise closest to Bristol. And screw us Bay Area fans. It's even to this day, it's hard to separate. When Red Sox Yankees is not what it was. Obviously, The Red Sox, last I checked, which was earlier today, were in last place, even though they had a winning record. And the Yankees, they're coming up. They got Judge and Stanton. They look like they've got close to enough to maybe contend for a championship this year. But the rivalry with the Red Sox is not what it was. But you still, and maybe ESPN is banking on that. They wanna just, well, I'm getting off topic here. Back to the Lakers. Los Angeles will go into the offseason trying to interpret what LeBron James meant when he went on camera, interviews, talking about, I have a lot to think about. 3 times. Those were his words when asked about his future. And since then, there's been a nonstop flurry of what he's going to do next. LeBron's almost 40 years old. You know what he's going to do next? He's going to sit down. He's going to sit down. He's going to probably ice 9 or 10 different body parts and joints of his. Probably have some water. And at some point, he'll make a decision on what he's going to do next. The R word's been thrown around. He said it's a possibility, even though in the past he's been clear about how it would, what it would mean to him to play with Bronny, who's still got to play a year, at least 1 year at his college, which I was going to let you know a little bit about his. I don't remember where Bronny signed up, but that year the Browns got to play, or is he going to take the year off and then come back and him and Bronny just tag team somewhere? Does Bronny even want his dad as a teammate? And Senior Bron did say, to his credit, he said that what he wants may not necessarily be what his son wants. So at least LeBron was able to step back for one of the rare times and not completely think about just himself and his legacy. He is looking at what his son may want to do, and his son, Bronny, may end up. From what I understand, he's good enough to get drafted. I don't think he's a lottery pick, but he's going to end up somewhere in the NBA at some point, just basically off his name, if nothing else. I mean, if a team is going to sign him, if for no other reason, then increase their odds maybe of getting his dad, who, even at 38, let's see, what was his numbers in Game 4? As he was running off streams, Senior played 48 minutes, which has got, I should have looked up when the last time he did that was. 15 of 25 from the floor, 4 of 7 from 3, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, so he just missed a triple-double. He made a couple steals, only had 1 turnover, and finished with 40 points, a high on either side by a lot. And it wasn't enough to get the Lakers over the hump in that Game 4 because of that god-awful third quarter. They only scored 38 points in the second half after a, what am I seeing here, 73-point first half. That's just hard to stomach. And could have been, part of it is LeBron used up all his juice early on. Whatever the reason is, the Lakers are gone. LeBron is not a free agent yet. I believe he still has at least 1 more year on his deal. And I bring this up also up partially because, as you may or may not remember, I am in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am a Warriors fan. And a lot of the talk has LeBron headed up here. He wants to play with Steph Curry. He wants to play with his boy Draymond Green. And he's only got a couple years maybe left where he's going to be able to do that, or at least where he's going to be able to dictate such a choice where a team would want to trade for him. And what we've had to hear up here all week, here in the San Francisco Bay Area, are all the different trade possibilities. We hear James is he's going to send Andrew Wiggins along with a couple of the youngsters like maybe Jordan Poole. Any trade is going to send, Jordan Poole is going to have to go back to the Lakers in any trade that the Warriors make. And probably Wiggins too, because Wiggins is not going to give up his job to James. They're not going to play that small where it's going to be a Wiggins-James Green lineup. No, that's not going to happen. So let's just, any trade possibility where he goes to the Warriors, where James goes to the Warriors, you can kiss Wiggins goodbye, and chances are you're going to kiss Poole goodbye for no other reason than salary. And I don't have the full salary breakdown, what's necessary for that, because, well, I just don't. But I can tell you this, it's going to take at least those 2, plus at least 1 other player, plus maybe even a draft pick, probably to get LeBron from the Lakers, because the Lakers, even where they're at now, I don't understand why they wouldn't want to keep him. Do they? And we know that LeBron pretty much calls all his own shots at this point in his career. If LeBron wanted to play for the, Dallas Mavericks, they'd have to figure out some way to make that happen because he's LeBron. And he can do that. He's the closest thing to Jordan we've had since Jordan. LeBron is going to decide what he's going to do. Well, obviously he's going to decide what he's going to do next. What I'm saying is, this isn't a guy who is going to just be traded and just have to deal with it like, say, Wiggins was when he went from Minnesota to Golden State. Wiggins, you traded to Golden State. Wiggins not going to be like, no, I'm not going. That's just not how it works with mortals. And LeBron is not a mortal. For whether you love him or you hate him, this is an all-time great. This is the face of the league for 2 decades running now. And he may end up a Golden State Warrior. How do I feel about that? I don't know. I know 2 years ago I would have been dead set against it. 2 years ago I would have been dead set against it because LeBron was our rival. And I am a firm believer in not playing with your rivals. Not if you can't beat them, join them. But the thing is, LeBron is not only beating us, as he's done now. He did it in this postseason in the second round of the playoffs, but he also did it in the play-in game 2 years ago. He is beating us and he's joining us. This isn't a Durant thing where Durant was beaten by the Warriors in 16 and then joined them that summer. This is complete opposite. And my personal feelings on LeBron vacillate. Sometimes I like the guy a lot. I like everything he's done for the league. I like what he does as a player. He's an incredibly gifted player. For most of his career, up until he started to age, he was as durable as they get, never missed games, never wanted to miss games. There were 2 knocks, major knocks, and this is just taking out the Warriors-Cavaliers rivalry. Aside from that, my 2 major knocks on LeBron were his failure to come through in big games in the first half of his career. And we know we have the examples. Second thing was the decision. I held the decision against him for a long time. Remember the decision? When he was a free agent after the 2009-2010 season, and he went on ESPN. They made a show. This has not been done before or since in any sport that I know of in the United States of America, or even any other. Well, maybe they've done it for rugby in Australia. I don't know, but I've never seen this before or since, where a free agent of any sport was given a special on network TV or cable TV or any TV to announce where his next stop was going to be. He was going to tell the world, before he told his former team probably, what his next address was going to be, what city he was going to play in. And we all know how that turned out. We sat through the whole hour of all the build-up and the fluff, the filler for, LeBron's ultimate decision, which was, if I remember correctly, was announced with about 5 to 10 minutes left in the program, the hour-long program, where he finally said, and he'd known this all along, at least for that day or whenever that thing was filmed, I'm taking my talents to South Beach, and that's what he did. And that night, the Cleveland fans felt betrayed from LeBron, betrayed by LeBron, burned his jerseys and his memorabilia and his cards in the streets, vowed to never forgive him. The owner even wrote that scathing letter vowing the Cavaliers would win a championship before LeBron would, and that turned out to be dead wrong, but whatever. And LeBron ended up with the Miami Heat, playing with Dwayne Wade and playing with Chris Bosh, and then they all went on stage and did a little dancing, and all the Miami fans acted like the championship was theirs already, and it was so ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. And not just that LeBron was coming to a team that had won without him. Dwayne Wade had led him to a title 4 years prior to that, remember, over the Dallas Mavericks. But he was coming to this team along with Bosh, and he was sitting on stage, and he was saying that not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7 trophies were headed to Miami. And up to that point, he hadn't won any. He had been to 1 finals up to that point, which was in 2007, and lost to the Spurs, right? Yeah, as great as he was, the ego in that guy, it's one thing to be confident, but come on, man. Come on. Now, granted, he, to some degree, backed up what he said, looking back. He did, to some degree, along with Wade and Bosh, lead the Heat to 4 straight finals. And they won 2 of them. They lost to the first one to the 2011. That was lost to Dallas. 2012, they were able to beat the Thunder. 2013, they were able to beat the Spurs. And then the Spurs got even with them in 2014. And then LeBron took his talents back to Cleveland and beat my Warriors in 2016 thanks to Kyrie Irving's shot over Steph Curry in the last minute. But I'm not here to talk about the past. So those are my two biggest knocks on LeBron coming into this season. And now, I'm kind of getting tired of him beating my Warriors. They used to, they played 4 times in the finals against the Warriors, 2015 through 18. And the Warriors took 3 of those, and LeBron was our rival. He was our rival. And he did a lot of things to make it clear that he was going to stay our rival for a long time. That it was always going to be just the way his words, his actions. This was a guy who was we just cannot. After going up against him that hard for that long, this would have been akin to Bill Laimbeer going to the Celtics. And you remember how Bill Laimbeer and Larry Bird used to go at it back in the day. There's just some guys you don't want on your team. There's some guys that just lock themselves in place as an enemy, lock themselves in place as a rival, lock themselves in place as someone you don't want to win with. I was honest. I would have rather lost, not had a winning team, than to have had to rely on LeBron to win. And why that is? Because he's our rival. And he's been our rival. I don't have a better explanation for you than that. Him and his ego, and wherever LeBron goes, it's all about LeBron. We've heard different things. Him and his teammates, and when the cameras are rolling, yeah, they're all buddy and stuff. But LeBron is, full well that it's all about him. How can it not be? How can it? He ever since high school, he has been front and center, everybody's radar. He's been the chosen one. His nickname is King James. You cannot have an ego. You cannot be who that guy is and not have an ego the size of Canada. And that's including all those islands up above at the very top. What's it called again? Nunavut? I forgot how you pronounce it. But in any event, and the Warriors, what makes the Warriors so great, since here in the Steve Kerr era, and maybe even the latter part of the Mark Jackson era, is that this was a team that, for the most part, was ego-free. This was a team that, by and large, and I'm not going to go on about the Warriors for too much longer because that's a local team. But this is a story. I'm just telling you the LeBron angle here. This was a team that didn't get caught up in itself, in its own success. They stayed grounded. Draymond notwithstanding, and his ego, as big as it is probably a fraction of that of LeBron's. So if LeBron comes to the Warriors, then he comes to the Warriors. I'll live with it at this point. It'll be weird to watch, but what are you going to do? It could happen. Other series, which should be over by now, but is still going on. Miami versus Boston. Miami, of course, jumped out to the 3-0 series lead against the Celtics, and pretty much everybody left them for dead, including me. I didn't see the Celtics coming back, especially after Coach Mazzulla went, on record as saying that he'd lost the locker room. Have I ever seen? I don't think I've ever heard of a coach or a manager, past or present, ever admitting out loud that he'd lost control of his team, or he lost the support of his team. Whatever Joe was trying to say by that, his team was not on, listening to him. He didn't have them rallying behind him, is what he was trying to say. And I never heard any kind of coach or manager admit that out loud in public like that, where other people could hear. You know why? Because you've already beaten yourself if you admit. At least that's what I thought. You say something like that in public, you've already lost. You have to. Appearances mean a lot in sports. You got guys. You have a bunch of millionaires, especially this day and age. You got a millionaire after millionaire after millionaire after millionaire after millionaire. All of them make more than the coach in most cases. Maybe the rookies don't. But if you're gonna try to beat other teams, you got to at least give the appearance that you're united. And now you're going out here, and if I saw, when I was watching the beginning of Game 4, and I looked at the Celtics take the floor, and I see Joe Mazzulla, and I'm thinking, what if I'm thinking the opponents are thinking it, and everybody's thinking it. They're thinking, they don't play for this guy. Whatever they do here tonight, This guy, Missoula, admittedly, probably had nothing to do with it. They're not even taking him. They're not listening to him. They're not united with him. Why are they even out here? But Boston, and I believe it was Jaylen Brown. Was it Jaylen Brown? It might have been Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. Now I think about it, went public and said things like, "Don't let us win one. Don't give us game 4." In other words, if you let us get one, we just might take the whole damn thing. And we all know, of course, only one time. Well, let's we'll frame it like this. It's never happened in NBA history, and it's only happened once in baseball history, where a team has fallen behind 3-0 in a playoff series in a best-of-7, ended up losing that series. I think it happened in NHL at least once. But like I said at the beginning of the show, I don't follow hockey. I couldn't tell you for sure. I'm not going to start now. But I can tell you this, that every team in NBA history, the NBA has been around since 1946 when it was the BAA, every team to go into the playoffs with start with a 3-0 series lead has gone on to win the 4th game and advance. No team has ever come back and won 4 straight. And Boston, of course, won 4 straight a number of times during the regular season. Boston was the best team in the league the first half of the season. And it would be foolish to say they couldn't do it just based upon what every other NBA team has done. It'd be foolish just on its own to say that they couldn't do it if they were so motivated. But it'd be a lot easier to say they could do it if they were actually playing for their coach. Ime Udoka, their previous coach, and we talked about him, I think it was last week. He's going to be the Houston Rockets coach next year. If you didn't hear that, he took the job down in Houston. He's going to take over for Stephen Silas. Udoka was a guy who everyone respected, and he would not have lost his team, but unfortunately, he made decisions with his thingy that cost him his job. And Boston still, to their credit, played as if they didn't miss a beat at all for most of the season. Get into the playoffs, they're rolling along. But Miami was, Miami is a very underrated. This version of the Miami Heat, this 8th seed version that's trying to climb all the way to the NBA Finals, they are so talented when they're cooking. They have so many ways they can beat you, and it's not just Jimmy Butler. It's Gabe Vincent. It's Kyle Lowry. You can give it to Bam inside. Bam scored 20 points a game this season, right? Caleb Martin can do some things. There's a number of different guys on, and mind you, they're also down 20 points a game with Tyler still out with his wrist injury, right? Just imagine. So that's why it's been stunning to watch Miami fall 2 straight games, fail to score 100 points in 2 straight games against Boston. Boston this is not the same team we watched in the first part of the series. Miami, they're saying all the right things. They're trying to convince. I think they're trying to convince themselves as much as they're trying to convince their fans and everyone else watching that, we got this. Don't worry, we got this. You're just playing with them. In so many words, that's what we're hearing. And Butler, sort of guaranteed without guaranteeing that Miami was going to close out Boston and go on to the NBA Finals, which they were last in 2020. I don't know if you can take that seriously. Guarantees are not guaranteed, not verbal ones. It's not like, this isn't like, the series is insured, and if the Heat fail to protect their series lead, Butler's guaranteed they don't get to sue him. So you take that for what it's worth. You gotta get back to what got you there, what got you that 3-0 series lead. And you remember in the early part of the series, Miami could just score at will. That has changed. Even at one point, even Duncan Robinson was the former starter who barely played during the season. He's been getting some minutes, trying to do some things, and Miami just has not been able to consistently score as they were early on in the series, and they're going to have to figure out something there. Whether you just you take advantage of the mismatches. And here's the thing. Boston, and this, as a Warriors fan, I notice things like this. Boston made a lot of mistakes in Game 5. Don't get me wrong. They made a lot of mistakes. They did a lot of things they shouldn't have done. And they got away with them because they know each other. They've played together so long. How many times did a Boston player leave his feet without any plan, turn around in midair, spin around in midair, almost blindly heave the ball to a teammate who happened to be open? That's repetition, and that goes back to Coach Mazzulla, even though he apparently has lost his team. Someone had to get them to do that sort of thing. That goes back to all the times they've done this in the past. Tatum, Brown, and Smart have been together for years now. They pretty much should know each other as well as anyone. My Warriors don't do that. My Warriors leave their feet all the time, throw the ball pretty much out of the arena. And it's you think, and I can tell you at least two different times where Curry and Clay have just not been on the same page within a couple feet of each other. Boston, at least in Game 5, had it going on, and Miami left them open so many times in the left corner. Did it stink over there? Was there like a potty diaper in that left corner area, especially in the first half, where Boston's shooters were just left open over and over? I'm talking about Horford, I'm talking about Tatum, I'm talking about all of them. So many. I should have done a tally. How many times Boston shooters were left wide open in the left corner? When I say wide open, I mean like no one even in the lane, on that side of the lane, on the strong side to defend. And most of those shots were taken. Most of those shots went in, and you've got to find some way. It's basic basketball. My buddy, who I have a show aside from this, which I'll let my bosses decide how they want to promote that. But my co-host on that show often talks about the constant way the Warriors leave shooters open in corners. I don't understand. I really don't understand. I mean, how hard is it to just stay with a shooter in a corner? Stay with a shooter anywhere outside the arc in this era where everyone's launching, everyone's firing. Everyone is firing up threes. Karl Anthony Towns, I think he's the Minnesota Timberwolves all-time leading three-point shooter, hoister. And that guy's 7 foot, right? You cannot leave guys in the corner. You can't leave guys anywhere beyond the arc. You cannot leave. Why does this happen? I know you got to help. If guys are driving to the basket, that's one thing. One guy should help. That's a lot different. That's not what I'm saying. You got a guy going to the basket, and in this case, you got 3 or 4 different guys collapsing to stop a 2-pointer. And granted, the 3-pointer back in the day was a lower percentage shot, but nowadays I don't know if that's the case. Nowadays, guys are shooting regularly 40% from 3. And you know this. I'm sure you watch enough basketball to see this. The 3 is not what it used to be. It is not like a bailout shot. It is not like a gimmick. The 3 is a weapon. You are attacking with the threes. How many teams remember the James Harden Rockets of the 2010s? They attacked you with threes. That was their game. They took more threes than they took twos. And I think was it Daryl Morey, the general manager, or was it the coach Mike? You know what I'm talking about? The guy Mike, mustache. They went on record as saying they only want 3 types of shots, right? D'Antoni. 3 types of shots: 3-pointers, layups if they're there, or free throws. Which hurt me as a fan of the 90s basketball and a fan of Olajuwon and Ewing and the guys you just give the ball to in the low post and let them go to work. But that NBA is gone, probably not coming back. And even though the number 1 pick, expected to be the number 1 pick in the draft, is 7'4", he's not your classic 7'4" guy. He weighs 210 pounds, guys. Victor Wembanyama is going to go to the Spurs, just like Tim Duncan did 26 years ago. And just like Tim Duncan did for the lottery Spurs as the number 1 pick in the draft in 97, Victor's going to come to the Spurs as the number 1 pick in 2023, unless the Spurs are on crack and they end up drafting one of those other guys, one of those hyphenated name guys who there's not even really that many great players in the draft this year. And Victor's going to get a shot. At the very least, he's going to get an opportunity to turn that team around. Am I saying he's going to be the next Tim Duncan? I can't say that. But I can tell you this. There won't be anybody in basketball, with the possible exception of Kevin Durant, who's a shorter version of Victor, doing the things Victor does. Sorry, guys, my shirt's getting on my nerves. There we go. There we go. That's what I want to do. I'm looking at my own reflection here. So, I look forward to seeing what Victor can do in the NBA. It's going to be... He can't be any worse than what the Spurs trotted out this year. 22-60, if I'm not mistaken. And I want to say only Detroit had a worse record in the NBA than the Spurs, which is hard to imagine a Greg Popovich team being that bad. But there you have it. Things do change when, a coach is, every coach needs a star. How many coaches win finals without a star? None. So even the greatest of all time, like Popovich, in terms of wins anyway, is going to need somebody he can lean on, somebody to get him 25 points a night. And that guy may be Victor. If Victor can make the transition to the NBA, and just about everyone I'm reading and listening to is saying he's got what it takes, God bless him. Go with it. So, Game 6 of Heat versus Celtics will be on Saturday, which is, well, technically today. It's after midnight as I film this. Saturday, and that could be interesting if the Celtics somehow pull out Game 6 and even the series of 3. Game 7 just might be the highest rated NBA game of all time. It just, maybe next to Jordan's comeback in 95, or maybe next to Jordan's comeback in 01. But I tell you, it's going to be up. It's going to be up there, right? And it won't even need much build up. I know I, for one, will not miss it for anything. I'll be watching live. If I'm not watching live, I'll be listening live on the radio wherever I'm at, watching the Celtics have a chance to make history. But they got to get through Game 6. Yeah, I'm not. It's not going to be a walk in the park. Miami is well coached, and there's some things about Coach Spoelstra. I know at least one guy who saw Spoelstra named as one of the 15 greatest coaches of all time when they had that poll or that vote or however it was done earlier this year, and wondered how Coach Spoelstra could be on that list. How is he one of the greatest 15 coaches of all time? This is Spo's. I believe he came to the Heat when LeBron came to the Heat, which would have been 2010. So this is Spoelstra's 13th season. And all 13 of those seasons, he's never won less than 37 games. He's got a lot of victories under that belt, and he didn't have LeBron for all of it. He didn't have Dwayne Wade for all of it. Remember, Dwayne Wade was not always the Miami Heat all the way through to the end. Dwayne Wade went to Chicago briefly and Cleveland briefly. He was gone for a while. When he came back, he was mostly a bench player, right? Spoelstra has won with, or at least contended with, 3 different versions, 3 different editions of this Heat franchise. And we forget, he may have done even better. He lost Chris Bosh to early retirement. Because Bosh couldn't get past those blood clots, couldn't clear NBA protocols, couldn't get back on the court. He had one of those too many, and with good reason. You don't want Chris Bosh to keel over and die, obviously. So, Spoelstra, and in those 13 seasons, if I'm not mistaken, he's missed the playoffs 3 times. And he had his first incarnation of Miami Heat was I'm getting ahead of myself. LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. Won with those guys. Went to 4 straight finals. Then he had the second version of Heat where Bosh was the number 1 for a couple years before the blood clots started happening. And other different guys came in. They contended, but they didn't get to the finals, but they contended. And then you have this current version of the Heat. After a couple down years, they bring in Butler. They get Harrow. I believe Harrow was drafted. I'm not sure if he was drafted or if they traded for him. I forget. But they get Harrow. They get Bam. Just after Wade comes back to the Heat and Whiteside has retired. Or Wade comes back to the Heat, retires. Whiteside is there, Hassan Whiteside, and then he leaves. That was another edition of the Heat. That was the tail end of the one that started with Bosh. They didn't get very far there, but this current edition has now been, if they win on Saturday, they're going to be 2 times in the finals in the past 4 seasons, 20 and 23, right? That would be 6 finals trips for Coach Spoelstra. Right? 6. Off the top of my head, how many coaches have been to 6 finals? Auerbach, Phil Jackson, Steve Kerr. Just off the top of my head, mind you. Pat Riley went to 5. Well, I don't think Pat Riley was the coach for the last. Or maybe he was. Well, we'll just give Pat Riley credit for all 5 of the Lakers in the 80s. And then Pat Riley was also the coach of the Heat for their 06 title. So Pat's been to 6 finals, at least. And off the top of my head, that's what I got. I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2 guys in there. But my point is, it's not a lot of guys who've been to 6 NBA finals. Right? And with all due respect to Jimmy Butler, he's never been a guy considered to be, and this is the Heat's best player. It has been for a few years now. And he was never a guy who's been considered among the best 5 players in the league. Maybe the best 10, depending on the season. But he's never been a top 5 guy. Nobody else on Miami has ever been a top anything guy. Maybe you might classify Bam as one of the top 5 centers in the league. I think you have to do that, especially after this past season. But this is not a roster laden with all-stars. This is a roster laden with a bunch of guys a bunch of undrafted guys, a bunch of guys who were cast off. And Spo has gotten so much out of them. And Haslam on the bench, as his enforcer, whatever you want to call him, certainly plays a role in that. What that role is, I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is that with the exception of that horrible on-court melee they had on my 42nd birthday last year, Miami has been consistently well-coached, put together, play hard. Butler's behavior which has not always been exemplary. Cough. Towns. Cough. Wiggins. Cough. Cough. Minnesota. Practice. But Butler has, for the most part, except for that birthday night, been on his best behavior in Miami. And Butler is not a guy who does anything Butler doesn't want to do. He went on record once as saying he would tell you when he was going to play back-to-backs. So, any coach who's able to get anything out of Jimmy Butler, he's okay in my book. And Spoelstra is a guy, when all is said and done, especially depending on what Miami does here in this round of playoffs, and if they are able to, well, let's just say they're able to somehow beat the Nuggets in the finals. You're talking about Spoelstra going to the Hall of Fame. You're talking about Eric Spoelstra, who nobody heard of when he came into the league in 2010, going to the Hall of Fame. You have to put him there. You almost have to put him there now. If he's one of the 15 greatest coaches ever, you kind of have to say, hey, he's a Hall of Famer, right? The rest of the guys on that list are in the Hall of Fame, except for Kerr, who's not eligible, and except for Doc Rivers, who's not eligible because they're both still coaching. But you have to put, well, Doc is not coaching at the moment, but that's neither here nor there. My point is, Coach Spoelstra has done a very underrated job lasting in a league that punishes coaches over and over again for succeeding, including Rivers, including Nick Nurse of Toronto, formerly of Toronto, including Mike Budenholzer, formerly of the Bucks. This league punishes success if it's not the ultimate success, consistently year in, year out. And yet Spo has survived, even though he has not won a championship since 2013. There's a reason why he's still there. And maybe that reason is Udonis Haslem likes him so much, and I'm certainly not going to do anything to piss off Udonis Haslem. Hell no. No. Mr. Haslem, here's your slippers, here's your newspaper. Please don't hurt me. Let's move on to some football news. So there's 2 things I want to talk about real quick in the NFL. DeAndre Hopkins was released today by the Arizona Cardinals. 3 seasons? 3 seasons, I believe. Maybe 2. You think I would look this sort of thing up. But anyway, DeAndre Hopkins was never what he was for the Houston Texans. He was never that for the Arizona Cardinals. And he had injuries, and the quarterback situation in Arizona is much different than the one that he left behind in Houston. Because in Houston, even though Deshaun Watson is a pervert, he is also a very skilled quarterback. And having him throw to you instead of Kyler Murray, if I had to choose between the two, I'd pick Deshaun. God dang it, I'd pick Deshaun Watson as a quarterback only, and we're not talking about humanitarian here. Neither one of those guys is proven to be the greatest human being. Although at least Kyler Murray, so far as I know, is not a pervert. So I give him that. But he's also not a very nice guy. Otherwise, from everything I've read, and that's a problem. So DeAndre Hopkins might actually end up in a better situation. And I know there's a part of him that is not all torn up about leaving Arizona because it never really got it going there. And he's in a division where Arizona was not going to win next year. They're not going to be ahead of the Rams, who I expect to be better if Stafford's able to get over his back injury. They'll have Cooper Kupp healthy next season. And I expect to be better than my 49ers because I love my 49ers and they've retooled a little bit. They've had to change defense coordinators yet again, but that's par for the course. I think they're still going to be a contender next year. I think they have a chance to win the division at the very least under Kyle Shanahan, as long as to get the quarterback situation settled. Now, back to Hopkins. He's rumored to be possibly headed to the Niners. We don't really need him. We don't need... I'm not saying he wouldn't help the team, but wide receiver is not our point of weakness right now. Our point of weakness right now is we don't know who our quarterback is. And we could sign DeAndre Hopkins. We could sign Cooper Kupp. We could get Calvin Johnson out of retirement to play. We could get anybody. We could bring Jerry Rice back for it. It wouldn't matter. We could have all the receivers along with Kittle in the world, but if we don't have an arm to throw to him, it's not going to matter. They've got to get the situation settled. And Trey Lance is practicing. They had OTAs recently. I think it was Tuesday they had the OTAs down in Santa Clara. Trey is saying all the right things about wanting to take over or wanting to compete, at least wanting an opportunity to compete with Brock Purdy when Brock Purdy's healthy. But we'll see how that goes. He's saying all the right things, but we both know that he wants that job, and he should. He should want that job. That job was his at one point. Hopkins is also, I've heard him, I don't think he's going to go back to Houston. That's a disaster area. But basically, there's not a team in football that would not be made better by a healthy DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins had some huge years down in Houston. And do you remember why he was traded? It wasn't because of salary. At least that wasn't the main reason. It was because of his on-field production. It was because of, in large part, and this is straight from Bill O'Brien's mouth, the former coach and GM of Houston. He wasn't thrilled with the kind of people that were coming around the Houston sideline and Houston Texans facilities in Hopkins' party. And we're talking like friends, exes, currents. You have to ask Bill or DeAndre who he's talking about. He traded DeAndre Hopkins, a Hall of Fame receiver, because he didn't like the guy's entourage. And I don't know if he tried any other way to solve that problem. If he tried to say, hey, DeAndre, listen, we got an issue here. Your people are coming around. They're kind of like being a distraction to you, being a distraction to the rest of the staff and the rest of the team. We got to figure something out. I'm not banning them, but we got to find some balance here. Was a conversation like that ever had with DeAndre? I don't know. I should go back and look at old articles and see if that was true. But to trade someone of his caliber for that reason, that's one of the reasons why Bill O'Brien got fired the next year. That's one reason why Deshaun Watson didn't want to come back to Houston. He wasn't even involved in that decision. And now I'm not gonna ever. It's hard for me to say that name without just vomiting. But if I'm Watson, I don't blame him for being upset about losing his wide receiver for such a chicken poo reason. At least I don't know how bad. Now I don't think Hopkins was bringing gangbangers around or anything like that. I'm pretty sure that wasn't the case. I'm pretty sure he wasn't bringing around prostitutes or other people, unsavory people, necessarily. These were people who, like, if a proper discussion was had where he was told, "Hey, can we figure something out?" I don't think there would have been a revolt. I'd like to think that the Hopkins does not seem like a jerk through and through. I mean, I don't know the guy personally, but he doesn't. What I have heard about him, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who, if you ask him, "Hey, DeAndre," he's gonna knock you out. I don't think that's the case. But that's what happened in Houston. That's one reason why Houston went from the AFC South top of their standings to a joke. My monitor just went on silent. I don't know if that was filmed. I gotta go back. I'll have to check and see if I was still being filmed. My monitor just went on standby with no warning whatsoever, even though it's set to not do that for an hour, and I've only been filming for 50 minutes. So we may have to do some editing there. May not. We'll have to check when the tape is finished. But Hopkins is a free agent. We'll see where he ends up. I have a feeling that we're going to be hearing from the New York Jets, because since this offseason started, the topic of any free agent or trade wide receiver comes up, he wants to go play with Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers, for all his weirdness, is a good quarterback, is a great quarterback. And that would be an interesting tandem up in New York. Rodgers to Hopkins. Other football news, and I didn't talk about this last week just because I'm not sure if I recorded. I think I recorded before it broke, but the death of Jim Brown at age 80, I believe it was 87. And Jim Brown, of course, considered by many to be possibly the greatest football player of all time. Greatest Cleveland Brown of all time, that's for damn sure. 10 years, all kinds of records, every kind of, and it wasn't just even the numbers he put up. It was the way he got those numbers. He was just a dominant player when he played. And here's the thing that I don't know if a lot of people know this. This is from what I read, straight from ESPN. Jim Brown's career ended not because he was hurt at age 30, not because he was tired of playing at age 30. From what I understand, from this article I read on ESPN, he was told he was late coming to camp one year because of whatever issue it was. And he was told to show up on time or there would be a problem. And Jim Brown is obviously not someone who's going to just take that lying down, certainly not after he's done everything he's done for that team. And so what he told him was basically, go F yourself, I'm retired. You're not going to give me, Jim Brown, a couple days or however long it was to handle this personal matter he was handling. Now, I'm not saying it's okay to just be late for camp because you're a great player. I'm not condoning that. I'm not saying he was right to do that necessarily. What I am saying is, but let's be real, there's two sets of rules for superstars, and there's even a third set of rules for icons. There's Michael Jordan, Jim Brown, Muhammad Ali. Those are icons. And basically, I'll stop short of saying you let them do whatever they want, but you let them do whatever they want, within reason. Jim Brown wants to be late to camp. You want to win football games, you keep Jim Brown happy. And they didn't do that, so Jim Brown retired at age 30 and went on to a long life of activism, fighting for civil rights, fighting for social justice, helping people, mostly minorities who, maybe may have been unfairly mistreated, and made a good life out of it. Now, he did also have a long rap sheet, and he did some things that he should not have done. I wish he had not done them. He was not a perfect man by any means. There was a lot about him that would not make him a good role model for youth, but I think the good outweighed the bad. I think that his place in American history is one that will be remembered positively, and not just for his incidents that got him jailed a number of times over the years. And yeah, he was wrong to do those things, but Hall of Fame, great player, maybe the greatest football player of all time, not many else in the conversation. Jim Brown, rest in peace, 87 years old, died a week before last. I didn't get to mention on my show, I'm mentioning it now. And then we're going to close with a little bit of baseball news. I didn't mean to run that long with basketball, but that's what happened. Some of the news around the league. Jordan Lyles has been a good pitcher, and he's been a bad pitcher. He's currently with the Kansas City Royals. He's one of only a handful of pitchers who has thrown a complete game this season. And I'm just throwing this out there. He's going to end up with one, if they don't take him out of the rotation, he's going to end up with one of the worst records ever. He's 0-9 with a 7.42 ERA through 10 starts this season. for the Royals. And he's a better pitcher than that. He was Jordan Lyles was one of the reasons why Baltimore surprised a lot of people last season, turning their fortunes around and having a good year last year when no one expected him to. He was on that team. He had a good year in their rotation. That's how he got the 2-year deal from the Royals. But it has not worked out well for him so far, and this has been the pattern of his career. He's had good years, followed by awful years, followed by a good year, maybe two, and then another awful year or two, and you just never know from year to year which one of him you're going to get. And this year you're getting a very crappy version, which is unfortunate because he's better than that. Other news, at least we got through this week with no pitchers being hit in the head by line drives. And I don't think any batters were hit in the head either, so those are always good things. The standings are pretty much what they were last week. We still have Aaron Judge has made headline because he was caught evidently looking into what he says was his own dugout because his team was chirping too much. Of course, haters of Aaron Judge, which I was for one day last season when he refused to come to the Giants and re-sign with the Yankees. Haters of Aaron Judge and haters of the Yankees are going to look at what he was doing as peeking at the catcher, looking for signs, trying to get an advantage, which I firmly believe he was not doing, because why would he? He's Aaron Judge, goddammit. He's the American League home run king. He doesn't need to do crap like that to succeed. He's going to decide now, when he's making $40 million, to start cheating, or it's not even really cheating, it's breaking the unwritten rules. He doesn't have to do that. There's no reason for him to do that. He says he's yelling, or he's staring at the Yankees bench because the bench is yelling too much. I'm inclined to believe him. It's good enough for me. And I'm not a huge Judge fan, because of him using my Giants as leverage to get the Yankees to pay up for him this past offseason. I'm not going to be a guy who's going to support Aaron Judge blindly ever, because that was not nice, even though it's done all the time. But in this case here, they're making something out of nothing. This just really shouldn't even be an issue. Let the man play. Let the man look where he wants to look. He's not looking at the catcher, Smith, for Christ's sake. His teammates need to just shut up and let the man hit, so he doesn't have to look over there ever again. And there was one more thing I wanted to talk about before we departed. Oh yeah, Adam Wainwright of the Cardinals came back from it. He missed the first month or so with injury, and then he lost his first 2 starts. He's picked up 2 more wins, and this is significant because now he, at age 40, is just 3 wins short of reaching 200, which I think is the only reason why he even came back. Or at least the main reason, one of the main reasons. He came back to pitch this year after his longtime teammates Yadier Molina and Albert Pujols retired. He came back 5 wins short of 200. 200 is basically the new 300 now. No one's ever going to win 300 again. If Verlander's not going to do it, then no one's not. And Verlander's got 246 at age 42, I believe, 41, 42. And Verlander's not going to get to 300. He says he wants to pitch till he's 45, but can he pitch effectively till he's 45? No. It's unlikely. He's not Nolan Ryan. And if he did, could you imagine if I certainly hope he's not on roids. I certainly hope they don't find out he's doing HGH or anything like that. That would just, because I've liked Verlander as a pitcher for the longest time. I've rooted for him to pile up those wins because he was our best shot at getting to 300 before he had the elbow surgery in 2020. He was the best shot of the active pitcher during that, but that's unlikely to happen now. So Wainwright is coming close to that milestone. We have guys like Andrew McCutcheon's getting close to 300 home run milestone. A's continue to... The A's ownership, blank John Fisher. He's a suckbag. Now they supposedly have the land they need in Las Vegas. Now they got to secure the funding. I'm hearing that from more sources who would know, that this is far from a done deal. That there's a good shot, because Fisher has proven himself to be an untrustworthy turd, that he's not going to get that money. So for you A's fans out there who don't want the A's to leave, and me, guys like me who are not necessarily A's fans but who also don't want the A's to leave, hold on to that hope, because the Nevada legislature still has work to do. People in charge down there, people who are running things. If we ordinary schmoes can see John Fisher for the smoking pile of turd he is, then they can certainly see it too. This is a guy who's proven that he'll do anything for $1. And also, Rob Manfred, if you're watching this, I used to respect you, but you've proven yourself to be an embarrassment as a commissioner for letting it get this far. I don't know what Fisher's paying you to do this, to let him get away with what he's doing to Oakland after 55 years of that team being there, but I'm not gonna say F you to Rob Manfred, but if I see you, I am gonna throw something at you. This has been Skillz on Sports. This still is Skillz on Sports because I forgot. There's one that I remember last week, I believe it was, I debuted my segment Skillz on Pills, my blood pressure medicine that I must take. My blood pressure gets high when I get upset about certain things in sports. And I have to take these pills. Why Skillz on Pills? And this week, my reason for that, is the situation down in Los Angeles with the, now just hear what I'm saying. The situation with the nuns down in Los Angeles, I'm not even going to get into what that's all about. What I'm going to get into is when political stuff, when gender stuff, and all that stuff crosses the line into my sports world, I don't like it. I don't like this as even a story. I don't like that's even been reported on. If the Dodgers don't want them there, fine. If the Dodgers do want them there, fine. There's no freaking reason why a group of nuns, whether they're trans nuns, whether they're cis nuns, whatever the hell they are, them coming to the park on Pride Night should not be a headline on ESPN on a night when so much else is going on. I don't know what. God bless them. You do you. All right. I couldn't care less. You want to dress up like a nun and you're a man, fine, whatever. But you start bringing that kind of stuff into making it's not sports news. It's not sports news. It doesn't belong as a sports headline. It doesn't. I don't care who's coming to the Dodgers game. I don't care. Maybe I care if it's Sandy Koufax, given his history with the Dodgers when he wasn't so fond of the ownership and he vowed he wouldn't come back for a long time. Anytime he comes back to the Dodgers, Dodger Stadium, it's special. And if it's a former athlete, a former player, former coach, someone who's tied to the team, fine. Other than that, ESPN and every article in the world, don't make those things stories. Stop trying to generate controversy where there shouldn't be any. The Dodgers can invite who they want. We need to just accept it. Not everyone's going to feel the same way as everyone else about certain things. Can we please keep politics, political issues, and social issues off my sports headlines? I go to sports pages to escape this stuff, not to get more of it. This has been Skillz on Sports. I'm going to take some more blood pressure medicine. Have a great one. See you next week.